For 38 years, Harold Mercer delivered mail in the town of Briar Glen. He knew every porch, every barking dog, every broken mailbox, every family that smiled too much, and every house where no one ever opened the curtains. People trusted Harold because he was quiet. He never asked why someone received letters from a lawyer. He never talked about overdue bills. He never mentioned the envelopes that smelled like perfume, the birthday cards that came too late, or the handwritten notes people hid under newspapers. When he walked up the steps to most of Briar Glen, Harold was just the mailman, kind old man in a blue jacket, a familiar face on the street. But after he died alone in his kitchen, police found something that did not belong in a retired mailman's home: a map, his final delivery route, and 3 houses circled in red. The map was folded inside an old postal bag. It was not new. The paper had softened at the corners, and the lines had faded from years of being opened and closed. Across the top, Harold had written, "Final route." Detective Nora Hale found it during a routine welfare check after Harold's neighbor reported not seeing him for 2 days. At first, the map looked ordinary: street names, delivery numbers, small notes about gates, dogs, and missing house numbers. But then Nora noticed the red circles: 3 addresses: 17 Maple Row, 42 Elmbridge Drive, 109 Carter Hill. Beside each address, Harold had written the same warning: "Do not deliver." Nora turned the map over. On the back, in shaky handwriting, was one more sentence: "They disappear after the letter comes." Nora did not believe in cursed letters. She believed in patterns. She believed in records. And she believed that people wrote strange things for a reason, especially when they were old, alone, and afraid. So she began with 17 Maple Row. The house had belonged to a woman named Diane Keller, 56, widowed, quiet. She had vanished 6 years earlier after telling a neighbor she was going to visit her sister. But Diane never had a sister. That was the first lie in her file. The second was in the police report. It said she left voluntarily. No forced entry. No signs of trouble. No witness. But Harold's map placed a warning beside her house: "Do not deliver." Nora searched the old missing persons file. One detail had been overlooked. The day before Diane disappeared, she received a certified letter, signed for at 2:14 p.m. delivered by Harold Mercer. The second house was 42 Elmbridge Drive. It belonged to Thomas and Elaine Rusk, a retired couple, known in the neighborhood for their perfect lawn and closed blinds. Elaine disappeared first. Thomas told police she had gone to stay with her cousin in Oregon. No one checked. 3 months later, Thomas sold the house and moved away. But Harold's delivery records told a different story. 2 days before Elaine vanished, a thick envelope arrived at Elmbridge Drive. No return address. No company stamp. Only her name, written in black ink: Elaine Rusk. Harold had made a note in his route log: "Woman cried at door." Then, 1 week later, another note: "Mr. Rusk asked if mail can be refused after delivery." Nora stared at the page. People did not usually ask that question unless they already regretted opening something.
The third address was 109 Carter Hill. This case was newer. Only 18 months old. A young man named Evan Doyle had lived there with his mother. Evan was 24. A mechanic. No criminal record. No enemies that anyone admitted knowing about. One Friday afternoon, he received a letter in a plain white envelope. On Saturday morning, his truck was found beside the river. His phone was still inside. His wallet was under the seat. Evan was gone. His mother told police he had been anxious after receiving the letter. She said he kept saying the same thing: "They found me," but she never saw what was inside the envelope. When Nora checked Harold's route notebook, she found the entry for that day. Beside Carter Hill, Harold had written, "Should have kept this one too."
That sentence changed the investigation. Should have kept this one too. It meant Harold had kept letters before. Nora returned to his house with a warrant. This time, she did not look at the obvious places. Not the kitchen table. Not the postal bag. Not the desk. She checked the basement. Behind a shelf of paint cans, she found a metal lockbox. Inside were 11 envelopes, all unopened, all addressed to people on Harold's old route. Some had names Nora recognized from cold files. Some belonged to people who had moved away suddenly. Some belonged to people who were still alive. Every envelope looked the same. White paper, black handwriting, no return address. No stamp from a company. Only a small mark in the corner. A dark blue triangle. Nora photographed everything. Then she opened the first envelope. The first letter was not a threat. That was what made it worse. It was polite, almost formal. It began with, "You are requested to correct what you have hidden. Below that was a date, a time, and a place. The old freight office near the railroad tracks. There was no signature, only the blue triangle. The second letter said almost the same thing. Different name, different date, same meeting place. The third letter included a photograph. Not violent, not graphic. Just a picture of a man leaving a building he had told police he had never entered. Nora understood then. The letters were not random. They were summons. Someone was calling people to a place. And after some of those meetings, people disappeared. Harold must have realized it. At some point, he had stopped delivering certain letters, but not soon enough. The old freight office had been abandoned for years. It stood near the edge of Briar Glen, where the tracks cut through weeds and rusted fences. The windows were boarded. The sign was nearly gone. Most people forgot the building existed, but Harold had not forgotten. In his final route notebook, Nora found a small drawing of the freight office. Beside it, he had written, "Blue car waits after dark." Nora searched traffic camera records from the last year. Most footage was useless. Rain, darkness, bad angles. But on 3 nights connected to the letters, the same car appeared near the tracks. A dark blue sedan. No front plate visible. One rear sticker. Briar Glen Historical Society. That sounded harmless. Almost respectable. And in small towns, respectable things often made the best hiding places. The Briar Glen Historical Society had a small office above the public library. Old photographs, town records, donation boxes, a wall of founders' portraits. The director was a woman named Margaret Bell, 72. Elegant, soft-spoken. She remembered Harold Mercer. Everyone knew Harold, she told Nora. He was part of the town. Nora asked about the blue triangle. Margaret smiled in a way that did not reach her eyes. "It's an old postal route mark," she said. "Some carriers use symbols for sorting," but Nora had already checked. No such symbol existed in Harold's official records. Then Nora noticed something on Margaret's desk. An envelope. White. No return address. Black handwriting. A blue triangle in the corner. Margaret saw Nora looking. Her smile disappeared. The envelope on Margaret's desk was addressed to Harold Mercer. It had never been mailed. Nora asked why the Historical Society had an undelivered letter for a dead mailman. Margaret said she did not know. Then she asked for a lawyer. The warrant came that evening. Inside the Historical Society's storage room, investigators found boxes of old town documents, property transfers, church donations, police clippings, and a private archive labeled Corrective Correspondence. Inside were copies of the letters, dozens of them. For years, someone had been sending people proof of old secrets, affairs, fraud, false statements, missing money, hidden accidents. The letters demanded meetings, but the records stopped before explaining what happened after. Then Nora found a file marked with Harold's name. The first page said, "Carrier has become unreliable." Harold had known for years. That was the hardest part for Nora to accept. At first, he probably thought the letters were private business. People received strange mail all the time. But then Diane Keller disappeared, then Elaine Rusk, then Evan Doyle, and Harold began keeping certain envelopes instead of delivering them. He could not stop all of them. He could not prove what the letters meant. But he marked the houses. He built his own warning system. Do not deliver. A retired postal supervisor later told Nora that Harold had filed 3 complaints before leaving the service. All 3 were dismissed. No evidence of mail tampering, no clear crime, no proof that the letters caused anything. But Harold's last complaint included one sentence. "I believe someone is using my route to choose who disappears." Margaret Bell was not working alone. The Blue Triangle had belonged to a private group inside Briar Glen's oldest families. They called themselves the Committee. Not officially, not publicly. In public, they raised money for restoration projects. They preserved old buildings. They funded scholarships. They spoke at memorials. But in private, they kept records of everyone. Their mistakes, their weaknesses, their secrets. If someone became inconvenient, they received a letter. A meeting was arranged. Pressure was applied. Sometimes money changed hands. Sometimes people left town. And sometimes, according to Harold's map, they never came home. Nora found meeting notes going back 15 years. One line appeared again and again. Delivery confirmed by HM. Harold had been part of their system without knowing it, until he started refusing to deliver. The case broke open when Harold's daughter arrived. Her name was Leah Mercer. She had not spoken to her father in 5 years. She told Nora he had changed after retirement. He checked windows, saved newspapers, wrote down license plates, called her at strange hours and asked if she had received any letters. Leah thought he was confused, paranoid, maybe lonely. Then Nora showed her the map. Leah covered her mouth with one hand. She recognized one of the addresses. 109 Carter Hill. Evan Doyle had been her friend. Harold had never told her. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he was afraid. Then Leah remembered something. Her father kept a second route book. Not in his house. In the one place he still trusted, his old mail truck. The truck had been sitting behind the postal maintenance garage for almost 4 years. Dusty, dead battery, flat tire. No one had bothered to clear it out. Inside the glove compartment, Nora found the second route book. This one was not warnings. It was names, dates, descriptions of cars, times the blue sedan followed him, license plate fragments, people who waited near mailboxes. The final pages were different. Harold had written them like a confession. I delivered the first ones because I did not know. I delivered the next ones because I was scared. I stopped when I understood. And then one final entry. If they come for me, it will be through the mail. Inside the back cover was a sealed envelope addressed to Nora Hale, a detective Harold had never met, because he knew someone would eventually ask the right questions. The envelope Harold left for Nora contained one photograph. It showed Margaret Bell standing outside the freight office. Beside her were 3 men. One was a former police captain. One was a judge. One was the owner of the newspaper that had written every missing person story as if the missing person had chosen to vanish. On the back of the photo, Harold had written, "This is why no one listens." The investigation did not end quickly. People resigned. Files vanished. Lawyers arrived. Families demanded answers. But Harold's map gave the town something it had never had before. A pattern, a route, a way back through the lies. For 38 years, Harold Mercer delivered everyone's secrets. In the end, he delivered one last truth. Some letters should never be opened. Some houses should never be ignored. And sometimes, the person who sees the whole town most clearly is the one walking door to door. This was Docket Stories, where every case file has a story. Subscribe for the next case.